Hello, this is Dark Shades, and this is part 3 of how to deal with friends who want to borrow from you. So we're going to sum it up in this part, and this section is going to say how to deal with them, what you're actually going to say. The first thing I would suggest is that you tell them that you're going to lend them the money, but if they don't pay it back, they mustn't ask you again. That's the first thing. Make it clear, put in the boundaries. You lend it, if you can afford it, that is. But if they don't pay it back, they must never ask you again for money. And you have to mean that. If you can afford it, if you can't afford it, don't lend it under any circumstances, because what happens is you get resentful, you get angry, you get put in debt. And I've known so many people who've lent money, and some people lend money when they're on a high. They've got a lot of money at some point for whatever reason. They lend money out of it and expecting that person to pay them back when they're on a low, and they still don't get the money back. There's this kind of misnomer that people think that, you know, if you lend money too easily and quickly, you have it, so you don't have to. They don't have to worry about giving it back. Or if they know that you've got money, like suppose they know you've had winnings, should it make a difference whether or not they pay you back? Of course it shouldn't make a difference. You've made a contract to borrow money, then pay it back. But some people, they think, oh well, she's got it. She ain't gonna miss it. If she didn't have it, she wouldn't lend it to me. And that is the misnomer. They really believe that if you didn't have it, you wouldn't lend it. They don't believe that you would, because of their own selfishness sometimes, they don't believe that you would sacrifice what you have to help someone else. And a lot of people, when they ask you to borrow, from you, that's their innate belief. That anybody they ask, they'll ask lots of people. And lots of people they'll ask, they say, oh, I don't have it, I'm so sorry, I don't have it. The one person who says, okay, I will lend it to you, but I must have it back, they'll think to themselves, oh, well, if she's lending it to me, she must have it. And that seems to be the premise upon which they decide whether or not they're going to pay it back. So the motto is, if you can't afford it, don't lend it. Don't get caught up in the emotions. You know, a lot of people, they, you know, when they want to borrow money or when they want to take advantage or exploit you, on comes the tears. You know, they let all the waterworks, oh, you know, I don't know, oh, this is the worst time in my life, I don't know how I got myself in this situation, blah, blah, blah. Depending on the situation, you can't poo-poo it though. But you're still not responsible for somebody else's situation. Remember that you're not responsible. You need to be assertive and take care of number one. Like I said, if you can afford to help them, of course, even if you decide to give it to them, knowing at the back of your mind you're not going to get it back, you can do it knowing that it's not going to be too much of a strain on your resources. But regardless of the tears, regardless of the drama, don't give it to them if you don't have it. That's my strong, strong advice. Let them know that carelessness and lack of commitment to pay will end the friendship. Because a lot of times people, I think you have to be upfront with people. No beating around the bush. You never lend money based on emotion, because when you lend money based on emotion, you're not giving clear guidelines. You're just saying, of course I'll lend you the money, don't worry about it, you can give it back to me when you have it. Worst thing you can say, supposing they never have it. You don't give money when you're feeling caught up in someone's emotions. You lend money when you're in a rational frame of mind, so you know exactly what you're saying and you still have an agreement regardless of how much it is. So be assertive and say no if you can't afford to lose it. Thing is, with borrowing money, it can really be a burden on friendships, because if they don't have it, they feel guilty. You feel guilty for following up, knowing their circumstances, especially if you know they're going through hard times. So, you know, a lot of friendships, they end up distancing themselves, and they don't, which is a shame, they don't get to enjoy that relationship anymore. Is the agreement explicit or implicit? By that I mean, just like I said a few minutes ago, are you saying, oh, you know, of course I'll lend you the money, just give it back to me when you can? That's implicit, because you're assuming that that person is going to give you back the money when they can, but there is no guidelines, no deadlines, there's nothing in that. If it's explicit, you'll be saying, okay, I'll lend you the money, when can I get it back? They'll say such and such a time, and you'll say, okay, this agreement, I'm lending you this money on the proviso that you promise to pay it back on such and such a date, whether it's when you get paid on the 29th of the month, whether it's 3 months down the line, whether it's 6 months down the line. You make specific guidelines of when you want that money back. They have a schedule, whether it's £50 a week, £100 a month, whatever it is. You make that clear, and that's explicit. If you want, you can also reinforce that with a promissory note or a contract, I think, depending on how much it is. If it's like 50 quid, it doesn't really need a promissory note or a contract. But if it's like a couple of grand, some people have the audacity to ask a couple of grand, but maybe it's not an audacity, depending on your financial income or where you are. Maybe 2,000 is nothing. To me, there's no way I could lend out £2,000. I just don't have it. So yeah, it's depending on your level. So £50 is a lot for some people, and £2,000 is nothing for others. Then you can let them know that you know, you don't expect to see them spending money frivolously while they still owe you money. You can't tell them how to spend the money, but you need to ask them what they need the money for, first of all, before you even lend it. And if they say, oh, I need it till I get a job, then if you see them all geared in, you know, dressed nicely in new clothes and new shoes, and they say, oh, well, you know, I'm preparing for a job, so I need these clothes for an interview, you can't say anything. But if they say to you, I need this money because I need to pay my my car insurance, or I've fallen short on a mortgage repayment, then you don't expect to see them in new clothes, going out to restaurants, blah, blah, blah. You know, you need to know exactly what you are how you are risking, because it's a risk you're taking. When you're lending money, it's a risk. It's a risk that you might not get it back. So you need to know how that person is spending it. So if you see them spending it outside that remit, it's not like you're going to be around them all the time, but you're bound to, if it's a good friend, you're bound to see them often. You know what I mean? Unless after they borrow it, they disappear off the face of the earth, but hopefully not. If they miss a payment and promise to pay you double next time, how will that make you feel? Are you going to start getting a bit critical, or are you going to start getting a bit nervous? If they can't pay it 1 month, how the hell are they going to pay 2 lots the next month? Is that going to be the pattern? You know, they've lost the commitment to pay already, now they've got the money. And that stems back from them believing that you have the money. When people don't pay someone back after they borrowed, it's really gross disrespect. You're really saying that you really don't care about that person. You don't appreciate the sacrifice that person has made to lend you the money. And it tells a lot about a person when they don't repay a debt, regardless of the circumstances. I don't think you should be asking to lend money unless you have the wherewithal to repay. So people who don't have a job have no business asking someone to lend them money and putting them in a predicament where, they might end up in a similar situation as them. It's not fair. If you've mismanaged your money or for whatever reason, you have to get yourself out of it. Like I said, in video number 2, I found myself in a position where I was redundant. I had to use all my resources, all my tactics to survive. I didn't borrow money, but I was tight. But I made sure I put aside I didn't have any luxuries. I was down to the absolute minimum. And even after I got a job, I didn't jump up to that. Now I make sure that my outgoings are still to a minimum, but at least I know I can buy luxuries. But things that like commitment stuff, like I'll never get, lots of channels, like Sky. I would never do that. I would never get a phone contract. Things that can tie you down, so that when you fall on hard times, you can't get out of it, because that causes stress and anxiety, and it's not healthy. So you must try to mitigate against any kind of unforeseen circumstances. They do happen, but at least if you've mitigated it against it beforehand, at least the crash shouldn't be too severe. And what attempts are they, if they are out of a job, what attempts are they making to find work? Have they found work, but, they're not going to be paid until, they have to work a month in lieu or something, salary in advance? Sometimes that can happen. And you have to think about that when you're just making your decision. Well, forgotten is not forgiven, is it? You can, if you decide that somebody's gone on and on and on and they're not giving you your money back and you've given up, you might as forgive the debt and just say, forget but not forgive, or forgive but not forget. And then if you see them, you might want to raise it, but it depends on how much you want to distance yourself from that person. Sometimes people have every intention to pay a debt, and for whatever reason they can't. And I believe that people should keep you constantly informed, if that happens. I mean, when you see creditors coming for you, most of the time they come for you is because you haven't kept them informed. Next thing you know, you've got, that program, we've come to take it away. If you can't pay, take it away. And they find themselves in that situation. So I guess if you find yourself that you've borrowed money from a friend, keep the friend informed. That will save the friendship. I'm sure a lot of times people, the friendships break down is because people stop paying and they don't keep the friend informed. And sometimes that's almost like overstepping boundaries, isn't it? Because if you don't keep somebody informed and you know that you owe them something, it's another form of disrespect. You don't want to do that. Just remember that asking a friend for money is like asking a friend for sex. It changes the dynamics of that relationship. So you need to know the consequences of asking. So in summary, if you don't have it, don't lend it. And if you do have it, make sure you have a payment schedule. Make sure you have it in writing, and only lend what you can afford to lose. This is Dark Shades. I hope this video has been helpful in allowing you to manage your finances and your friends.